all the things that did not work for him are working for me, but I'm the one who's not making it work. So Scott was presenting. For those who have not seen this, Scott Hanselman, Uber community guy. Before he joined Microsoft, I used to know him, but he's not the Uber community guy. You should go check out his build keynote. He started speaking about 10 minutes into his build keynote with worldwide live telecast and 7,000 people or whatever, 5,000 people in the room. His microphone stops to work, and he's using both hands to write some code. And some AV person runs from the backstage and hands him a mic like this, right? And then he's thankful that he has a mic, but then he's trying to hold it and trying to type, right? And that's not going too well. And suddenly Scott Guthrie, who's the EVP, essentially overall owner of Azure, comes out running and says, let me hold the microphone for you and add some value to this demo. And that was like the best moment there, him saying, let me add value. Okay, with that said, what I'm going to skip into, I'm going to change the deck. Hopefully you guys can hear me. And there have been some changes. We were, this group is very dynamic. We are always getting speakers. Even at the last minute, we welcome them. So I'm going to have to change my presentation slightly, but I have about 25, 30 minutes to talk about why PaaS is important and how you can accelerate the applications that you are developing using PaaS. And I can't say there's a big vision behind it or something, but I got started with Azure almost about 10 years back. Somebody threw me into a project which was related to public cloud, didn't know what it was, and got really inspired by that small project and has been working since. And of course, when Azure first came out, it was all PaaS. And then it may have been a bit ahead of its times, because what people at that time were looking for was really, I want these virtual machines and I want to get outside the data center. So everybody, Google, if you look at that, they all had to change and provide a good IaaS platform, which they all did, and then ultimately came back and realized that, okay, now that we have created a pretty comprehensive IaaS offering, how do we now that we have this infrastructure in the cloud, how do we accelerate the building of these apps, right? That's what the PaaS story is about. This is the agenda. I may not have time to go through all the bullets, we'll see. So why is PaaS important? And you can see the picture on the right-hand side. I actually had a more interesting picture related to how pizza is made and how it applies to PaaS, but I thought you may or may not appreciate it. So at the last minute, I made the call to not include the slide. I will tweet it, though. So look at this picture just for a second, and then you get the idea what I'm talking about. So this is on-prem. All the blue boxes are the ones that you manage yourself. When you go to IaaS, these are the boxes you manage. When you go to PaaS, these are the boxes you manage. Of course, you want to be in SaaS if you can be, but and I encourage you to start at SaaS, but not every workload can go to SaaS, and there's some customization that is specific to your domain. So you often end up in this mode right here, PaaS, and as you can see very easily, lot fewer blue boxes, lot fewer boxes for you to manage, right? What you're left with is essentially application and data, right? And because that's the case, oftentimes, and we've been doing a lot of projects ourselves, going to these agencies, have large number of these apps. They don't want to just lift and shift these apps because they don't want to inherit the problems they have on premises. They don't want to be patching. They don't want to worry about storage. They don't want to do all of the operational things. They want to move these applications to the cloud, and then somebody else have to manage that. So they're move-in ready, some assembly required. So if you look at the PaaS platforms that are available today, you have to do some minor bit of refactoring for it to run in PaaS. That assembly requirement is getting down, and you'll see as I talk about the different services. So that's what PaaS is all about. Why is it important for government apps? Well, we have, hopefully in 2018, we have moved past just the infrastructure, and we are really about time to value. How quickly can we get requirements from our users and convert that into our capability, right? So it's from infrastructure to innovation. And PaaS by itself will not succeed if we don't have compliance. I'll show you what I mean. If it was a completely multi-tenant environment where you do not have network isolation, it may not work from a compliance standpoint. So you want PaaS with compliance. You also want all of the security monitoring that you've come to expect. And then, of course, you want to pay for elasticity. You want to only pay for the parts of the applications and the infrastructure that you're using. So if you put them all together, this is why it's becoming really important for government agencies to look at PaaS. And it's not just the Azure platform. If you look at what's happening in AWS or Google or any platform for that matter, it's really people are driving towards this value. Okay? So here are the key tenets for PaaS. As I said earlier, it is not just about, hey, quickly drop the code, make it work, but you have to meet these key tenets. You want an extension of your identity that is available on premises. You want to project that identity in the cloud. You want virtual isolation. You want app isolation, equally important. I work with financial services customers as much as I work with public sector customers. PCI compliance is really important. So when people come to us and say, out of the 100 services, which ones to use? We oftentimes apply this and say, what is the app isolation story? Can you sort of protect the traffic just to be in your enclave, if you will? Data encryption, I don't need to say much. Same with compliance. And then you need all of the auditing and monitoring controls in place for you to have confidence in moving to a PaaS platform. Okay? Here are some of the certifications that are available in Azure Gov. It's a long list. I won't keep that slide for long, but you can go check this out. The Azure Gov team has made a lot of effort to get these certifications in place. I'll just highlight a few of them right here. You can see this layer. The number of certifications, I could just keep scrolling to the right here. Okay? So going forward, Azure is more than 100 services, of course. And of course, we are here to talk about PaaS platform. And then for some of you who have not seen this eye chart of a diagram, right, don't think of Azure Gov as just as a bunch of servers. There are a bunch of high-level capabilities, some of which we'll talk about in a moment here. Okay? But keep this picture in mind, amount of services, not that you'll use every single one of them, but you need to be aware of broadly what these services are. Okay? All right, so that, let me shift gears here. That was a quick 2-3 slides to motivate why PaaS is important and what kind of services, what kind of capabilities you want for you to be able to go to PaaS. What I want to do next, that was about 5 minutes or so. What I want to do next is I wanted to show you an application that I didn't build. A colleague of mine, Brent, who couldn't be here today, he built that application. And he was kind enough to allow me to demo this application. So it's an interesting application built completely using services that are available in Azure Gov. Okay? So we're not using any service that's not available. So I want to not have you to worry about questions that can this be done in Azure Gov or not. And it is, even though it is a simple little application, there are a number of moving parts, and I just wanted you to walk through those moving parts here. So here's the application. You're getting some video feeds, and those video feeds could be from, I would let your imagination run wild. There are a number of classified use cases, commercial use cases, what have you. You're getting some intelligence data. You're collecting this data. You're using some cognitive services to analyze that data, and then you're making that search available for someone, right? 3 core components. And normally, you would probably have to have some sort of a large footprint of an infrastructure to be able to accomplish this. Instead, we built this application from ground up using PaaS, serverless computing, cognitive capabilities, and things like that. Okay? Since we don't have any super sensitive workload, obviously we couldn't talk about, so we have a very simple little video source. You'll laugh at when you see this, but we have a simple little video source. Here is the, let me actually show you, let me zoom into this for everybody to look at this here. So I have App Service here, which is a complete PaaS platform. And if you have not used App Service, if you're trying to build a scalable application, you're trying to write a bad job, you're trying to write a mobile backend, you're trying to expose an API, and you don't want to be managing any of the underlying infrastructure, then App Service is for you, right? So this is where we are hosting the website that you're about to see. And why you want to use a service like this? Because all of the high availability is baked in. Some of you probably use, DevOps is all rage these days. So you have continuous integration, continuous deployment, and then you also have things like testing in production, which means what you want to do is you want to take 0.01% of your production traffic, send it to a different page, see how people are reacting to it, and then apply those changes and then broadly distribute them, right? Those kinds of capabilities are built in an app service. So that's app service. Then we have a serverless capability. Why serverless? Because you really don't have to provision any infrastructure for that. You drop pieces of code, and very interesting, this is the only service that does that. You only pay for the number of times your code gets executed, right? People provision VMs all the time. They pay the full price, and they find out that their CPU utilization on the VM is about 10%. That's an industry average. Here, you're paying by the number of executions. So that's what the Azure Functions is here. We have, in the last meetup, if you were here, our last meetup was dedicated to cognitive services, so I won't delve deeper into this because there were some very good demos last time. I'm just going to be using that capability, okay? So somebody is going to send us a video. We're going to split that video up. We're going to send it to cognitive services. We are going to have cognitive services analyze that video, and then we are going to make that information available on a portal for us to search this information, okay? That's our application right there. Let me just go ahead and show you this application. So before I jump into the application itself, let me just show you all of the resources right here, resources groups, and I will zoom into it in a second here. So these are all the resources that we are using, okay? Let's just talk about all of them. So this is the apps, this is the serverless compute capability. This is the app service where we are hosting the website. Very interesting, I'm also using Cosmos DB. If you've not looked at Cosmos DB, here's a tip for you. It is one of the fastest growing services. And the key capability there is that it is one of the first services that is designed with geolocation or geo independence in mind, which means that you can have a database in one region. Let's say you're running in 2 Azure Gov regions. The service is capable of replicating the data across these regions, and if one of the regions becomes unavailable, for example, it will automatically redirect you to the second region. So all the heavy lifting involved in keeping these databases in sync is done by the service. It's also probably the first service that gives you an SLA, not just on availability, but it gives you an SLA on read and write. So they say that 99th percentile of read-write operations will be under 10 milliseconds. Okay? That's the read and write portion of it. So that's the Cosmos DB. So our video is coming in, we break it apart, we store the fragments in Cosmos DB, we call the serverless compute capability to go run cognitive services on it, and then we get the data back, we store it in Cosmos DB, and then Azure Web Sites then allows us to search that data. Okay? Let's look at the application here really quick. Here is the application, and I said you laugh at this because this data is coming from Brent's home. He just he has a Ring doorbell, and he's collecting some data. So he took this video right here, and you can see at the bottom of this video, he has taken clips of this. This is Brent's son coming in, and he took this data essentially and split it up and then sent it to cognitive services, and cognitive services is coming back and saying this is what is happening in this scene right here. Okay? So somebody's outside, can see grass, a boy coming in, young person, little man, front of a car, whole street house. It sent some information. All of this is coming back from cognitive services, right? And then each frame, you can go and analyze the frame itself. You can watch that, or you can actually go into the details of this page, and it shows you, if you go further down, these are the different scenes that went up, and you can click on that. You can download this, and you can, in fact, you can come up here, and let's just go back to the top of the page. And because we have this data coming back from cognitive services, we can even search for, we saw a little there, so hopefully it'll come back, search, come back. Oh, did I see? Yep, so I search for this, and every place that it found that keyword, it brought those frames back. So imagine the potential, right? We've taken a video clip, spliced it up, sent it to Azure, run cognitive services on it. We got the keywords, and then we stored the keywords in Cosmos DB, and then we are running a search on it and saying, show me all the scenes where a little boy shows up, or some keyword like that. Okay, so that's essentially a quick demo of the capabilities. Everybody see the number of services that are available. Okay, so that's one. So you have app service. Let me go back to the deck here for a moment, and let's see how am I doing in terms of time here. 6:56, and I'm good. I'm good till 7:05. Is that Tina? Okay, all right. So I have 10 more minutes. Great. I came prepared to talk longer, and I'm in my real. Oh no, I can keep going. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I don't take up. Diego has very good content, and there's another gentleman coming later talking, so I don't want to be mindful of their times as well. Okay, so let's just go through a couple of slides to give you an idea about how these services are. So I already talked about app service. What is really interesting, and originally I was told to come in and talk a little bit about, I was at the Build conference earlier this month, and there were a number of announcements at the Build conference that came out, and let me just give you a couple of them, and then what I'll do is I'll send you a link as part of the Azure Gov Meetup. You can read up the entire list. So I talked about Azure App Service, right? Allowing you to build scalable applications. They have recently added, last year they added this capability that, what if you didn't want a Windows runtime, you wanted a Linux runtime? And so added that Linux capability because, turns out that, things like Node might run better on Linux. So you want a Linux Node experience, you can get that. What they've announced at Build this time is instead of being able to bring just one container to the mix, you can bring multiple containers. So your application may be comprised of microservices, which can be multiple containers. So you can take a Kubernetes pod, if you will, which is a collection of containers, and give it to the app service, and then run it in that manner. So that's the web service right here. And just to give you an idea, let me just go to the portal. Make sure. So let's just actually very quickly build one service, create a new resource, just to give you a flavor for those who have not seen that. Here's the web app. Let me go ahead and call it Meetup. I'm very creative when it comes to names. I'm just trying to find a unique name, guys. It's just a joke. And let's see. So I'm deploying this. As you can see, I'm deploying this to the Azure Gov Iowa region. Okay. So we're creating a very quick website just to give you a flavor for this. Let's see it completes. As soon as this guy gets completed, we will go and check that site out. So looks like the thing succeeded. And let me just find. So I'm just going to go back there, and let's just copy the URL. And this is the page right here that we just deployed. Did I call it Meetup or Azure Gov Meetup? Gov Meetup, okay? You guys have to keep me honest here because there was something called Azure Gov Meetup, okay? So let's just copy this time. And sure enough, so I have this website right here. This was successfully deployed. Everybody can see that. Let's just go back to our website and let's just see if we can connect it to. Let's see if I can connect it to a GitHub repository. I'm just going to go to my GitHub repository, and let's see if I can find. Let me see if I have something that I can deploy. Let's just find this Node app. Everybody's with me so far? All I did was created an empty Azure website in the Azure Gov Iowa region, and about 10 seconds later, the website got deployed, right? And then what I'm going to do next is I am going to, right here, say that please pick up the code from the GitHub repository. And now, see what's happening? It's really interesting here. So it is going to go out to my GitHub repository right here. It is going to go out to my GitHub repository, take my Node.js application, automatically sync to it, get that code deployed to the website that we just created. Okay, pretty cool. We'll wait for about a minute or two for that code to be deployed, and then it should be fine. I want to take about 5 minutes to show you one other capability that you will find interesting. So, when it comes to PaaS services in Azure, you have a choice of about 3 or 4 different services, and I often get questions about which one to use in which situation, right? So we have already seen the Azure Web Apps, right? We just saw that. We saw the serverless compute capability, right? Where we just drop some functions, and by the way, I didn't show you the code. Here's what the code looks like, right? So basically, remember I was talking about you only pay for the times this code executes. Here's the code, and the slide makes it difficult to read this code, but here's the code, and you can see that I can just drop this code as part of functions, right? So on one hand, I have app service, I have the serverless compute capability, but what if I am trying to do a completely microservices-based development, right? And then in that arena, we have 2 important services. You have 2 choices to make. One is Service Fabric, and some of you may have, that's a Microsoft's own orchestrator. And in fact, many of Microsoft's own services are built on a Service Fabric. And there was a very interesting announcement at Build where Microsoft is going to provide you, called Mesh, we're going to provide you a managed capability around Service Fabric. That capability is coming, but since that is in preview, that capability is not yet available in Azure Gov, right? Because we don't see preview capabilities show up in Azure Gov. We only see GA capabilities. So the other option is either you can go with the orchestrator called the Service Fabric, which is Microsoft's own orchestrator, or you can go with an open source orchestrator, and that orchestrator more and more is turning out to be Kubernetes, which was created by Google and then contributed to the cloud native foundation. So it seems like a lot of momentum. If you're doing multiple containers and then you're figuring out how to load balance these containers, a lot of that mindshare is going towards Kubernetes because that has gone to the cloud native foundation. And one of the 3 authors of the Kubernetes specification, Brandon Burns, joined Microsoft and heads up the Kubernetes team there. So we don't, because that's a preview capability, we don't have that available in Azure Gov yet. But what is available in Azure Gov today, and I want to show you this, and I'll promise to end there, is so we don't have a managed Kubernetes instance just yet because it's in private preview or public preview right now. What I was able to do is there's a service called ACS, which allows you to spin up a Kubernetes-based orchestrator in your own subscription. So let me just show you that very quickly here. So here is my Azure Gov subscription right here. And let's just go into, so I'm right now in my, as you can see here, I'm in Azure Gov, and I just deployed this afternoon, I just deployed a Kubernetes cluster. So if you wanted to, remember we are talking about multiple microservices and container-based deployment, and you need orchestrator, you can spin up the Kubernetes-based cluster here. And once you've done that, I can come in easily, and I have Putty here, and I'm just connecting to that cluster right here. And right now, it may have timed out. Yeah, I'm not going to, because I moved my network connection, it may have timed out. I'll have to spin that up again. But it's hard to see it here, but I was able to SSH into that Kubernetes cluster. Yeah, the network was down, that's why. I was able to SSH into the Kubernetes cluster and then run kubectl commands and deploy containers and things like that, okay? So let me wrap this up. I'll get Diego to come up to the stage next. But let me wrap this up and just summarize everything that I've shown you up until now, that most people are thinking about time to value and innovation when moving to the cloud. and PaaS has an important role to play. On Azure Gov, you have at least 4 different options that are available. I encourage you to look at these options and decide which one meets your needs, and then explore that further. And if you have more questions, find me later this evening, or you have my Twitter alias, which is VLele. Yep.